Stalin's government marked the most authoritarian and repressive period in Soviet history. The absolute control exercised through terror and persecution of political opponents was a daily reality for the population. Among the various forms of punishment implemented by the government, the gulags stand out as the dark symbols of the Stalinist regime. These forced labor prisons, amidst extremely adverse conditions, allowed Stalin to eliminate his adversaries without inciting revolts, as those who were sent to these places rarely returned to tell their experiences. Siberia became the main stage for these prisoner camps, but among them, one stood out for its unique characteristics. The camps housed individuals who had opposed the government's policies, among which the most contentious was the collectivization of agricultural lands in the Soviet Union. Initiated in 1928, collectivization aimed to increase agricultural production by taking control away from individuals and centralizing it in the state, which would use the funds to strengthen the machinery and modernize the industry. However, in practice, the policy resulted in one of the worst famines ever faced by the Soviet Union's population. Rebellious peasants against the collectivization measures were rigorously punished. Those who were not killed were sent to the gulags, where they faced inhuman working conditions, hunger, and disease. Amidst the brutality of the gulags, Nazino Island emerges as a particularly terrible example. Located on the Ob River in Siberia, the island was used by the Stalinist regime as a place of exile and punishment for thousands of prisoners, especially during the 1930s. However, what makes Nazino unique among prisoner camps is the terrible episode that occurred there in 1933. That year, the Soviet government sent around 6,000 prisoners to Nazino with the purpose of colonizing the island and establishing a self-sustaining agricultural community. Besides ideological enemies of Stalin, this group included beggars, ex-priests, and criminals. The lack of preparation, resources, and proper supervision resulted in an unprecedented human disaster. The prisoners were left to fend for themselves, without shelter, sufficient food, or medical assistance. On the second day on the island, temperatures dropped below zero, and rain began to fall. Desperate prisoners sought ways to survive by ingesting tree bark and moss from the area. As days passed, more people died due to the terrible conditions, and escaping was impossible, as the island was surrounded by armed guards. The first cases of cannibalism on Nazino Island occurred on the 10th day, when dangerous criminals who had been brought together formed gangs to terrorize the others. In subsequent interrogations, those accused of cannibalism claimed to have removed pieces from living people. It was possible to see meat hanging from trees and corpses on the ground on the island. 1 month after the start, the remaining people were evacuated from the island to Siberia. In the end, of the 6,000 people, just over 2,000 survived. The tragedy that occurred on the island was only judged because an instructor from the Narim District Communist Party Committee investigated and brought it to the Kremlin's attention. The general public only became aware of the case in 1980, shortly before the dissolution of the Soviet Union.